Hey guys, the podcast will always be free. If you go into the description or the top comment, there's a locals, a Patreon, a Buy Me a Coffee, a Cash App, a PayPal. Legitimately, $1 a month makes the world of a difference. And I know you're thinking, no, it doesn't. It literally does. It keeps the show going. It's why it's so free flowing and hectic and frankly unprofessional and vulgar, but it's the reason why it's free and why it's fun. Please, if you can, donate $1. Thank you. And we are recording on Sunday, February 1st, 2026. Let's follow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time with Mr. John Waters, Mr. Ian Burlingame. You guys can go to the links in the description. You can find Twitters, writings, websites, all that good stuff. Um, Obviously, we've done this 2 or 3 times before with Jim Kunstler. Jim, last minute cancellation, and I'm an idiot and I didn't check the email. So Jim's not here, obviously. But as Mr. Waters just asked about themes and topics. And yeah, no, that's not what I do here, for better or worse. It's just I light the bottle rocket and see which way it goes. But so just to immediately, because EM and I just spoke, John, what was on your mind about comedy as it pertained, I guess, to our last conversation or bridging it to this one?
Well, I think it comes directly from where we started 2 conversations ago, which was literature, writers, and all that, and the role of the artist in society. And it seems to me that actually, in a certain sense, a more powerful force than any of those is comedy. Um, that particularly maybe in modern times. I'm not so sure about this because, if you look back, you see that, comedy in the 50s and so on, as far as we can gather, was quite twee and sort of harmless, generally speaking. Not entirely. There was some early signs of ideological creep, but certainly in the last 30, 40 years, comedy has in our societies has become hugely influential. And one of the very kind of striking things about it is that it has always tended to veer left, which it doesn't necessarily follow, shouldn't necessarily follow. The best theory of comedy that I've come across, and I can summarize it very succinctly, is a guy called Henri Bergson, who wrote an essay some years ago, who identified comedy as being a kind of a mode of attention to rigidity in society, or even an attack on rigidity. In other words, things that become sclerotic in a society become funny and become therefore a target of comedy. And you can kind of see how that would have applied maybe if you look back at I don't know, Thatcherism or something like Reaganism, maybe to some extent, not to the same extent necessarily, because he was quite funny himself in his own way. But the weapon that comedy is tends to actually lend itself towards leftist ideologies. And that's very interesting in the present context, because what we've actually seen is that the orchestrators of whatever is going on, even though by any definition that we might have conceived since the 1960s, or even before that, they're fundamentally, reactionary. They're fundamentally, they're the man. They're the man that the hippies used to talk about. And yet they have managed to recruit the left in general in our societies to their cause. And also they have managed to recruit most of the comedians, almost all. I mean, it's actually, because there are some comedians coming out and there is some, humor in attacking it, but it's very low key comparatively. As far as I can tell, certainly in my country, in Ireland, but even looking at what I see, the Saturday Night Show in the US and things like that, they seem to be fundamentally leftists. And everything else seems to follow that. And there's a very good reason for that, because, I think every sensible person probably wants to be on the same side as the comedians, because they're very effective comedy is a very effective political weapon. But also, there's a better chance there that you're not going to become a target if you're on the same side as them. So that's the kind of thing that I was thinking about. It's a strange kind of and I think a disproportionate element within the mix that we've been looking at. That comedy is actually, there's certain things you could almost put it like this: that until such time as our side recruits the comedians and pretty much has the bulk of them, we don't really have a chance of winning on the field.
Yeah, so having known several people who tried to be stand-up comedians and have done tours and all of that, steadily over the last 30 years, if you were a non-outright far left lefty comedian, you didn't get hired. You didn't get the gigs. And it's a matter of, the theater owners, with some few exceptions, wouldn't be able to book the big stars, wouldn't be able to fill their comedy theaters with fill the seats of their comedy theaters if they allowed anybody who was outside the wokest dogma in their comedy. And, so that's one side, is less about recruiting and more about the reinforced incentive structures that have incentivized against anybody, not just in comedy, but all the arts and literature for quite some time, who might call out or mock or just make funny anything that's on the left of the left. So it's less about, people have to earn a living. And as you know, John, you've been around for a good time with, the creative folks for decades. They're not wealthy people usually. Many of them, particularly when they're starting out, are barely making by.
Sure. I get that, Ian, very much. But I wonder, isn't there also a very strong ideological element within this? And it's the same reason as journalists and poets and painters and playwrights in general, not entirely, but in general, tended to go with, for example, in the COVID project, as the World Bank called it, they almost immediately started either to do one of two things, it seems to me. I've been watching a lot of them here in particular. They either went to the side of laughing and abusing the anti-vaxxers, etc., or else they just fell completely silent and avoided the subject and tiptoed around it in their performances. And I've seen some comedians do that, and they do it very convincingly in a certain sense. You don't really almost notice until you've left the theatre. But then you think, so the fact that they haven't done what the other guys have been doing, joining the regime, you think, so they're with us, but they're not able to say it. They're afraid to say it. And that's where I think the money thing comes in very strongly.
Yeah, so artists have always been dependent for their livelihoods on patronage, right? This goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years. They're dependent on patronage because they don't build anything or create anything that could feed them and house them, right? So when you are dependent upon a patronage system, whether it's from a high net worth family or the Kennedys, the Kennedy Center or whatever it is, right, or an endowment, or an agent and a booking agent who's going to give you the position, give you the job that night on that stage, it's still patronage. It's all patronage. And all you have to have is a patronage system that's set against the truth, that's set against reality. Well, specifically, again, taking this back very far, when we are a healthy society, we have true court jesters, the ones who can speak to the king, truth to the king. And the king protects that jester from the rest of the court. Because when the court jester is speaking truth to the king, they're usually talking about the rest of the court and how the court's conducting themselves. And so when the king no longer owns the patronage and the security for that jester, you don't have a court jester anymore. You have a mouthpiece for the court.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just thinking of two particular individuals who have crossed the line in a certain sense in the last few years. One is John Cleese, Monty Python and Faulty Towers and all that stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he
yeah,
has
yeah.
been very outspoken against wokeism.
Yes.
And he's fought a good fight. But the interesting thing about it there is, though, for him, and this is just a by the by, I mean, for somebody who's such an extraordinarily funny guy, I mean, obviously he's into his 80s now, he's not quite as funny as he used to be. So,
Self-restraint. Yeah.
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 The other is Ricky Gervais, who is extremely
Yeah.
funny and extremely reckless, you would almost say.
Yes.
He comes at this stuff and is actually probably stands out as the most, I suppose, radical figure in that context at the present time.
Yeah, these are court jesters, in the classical sense of the word.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it seems that you need to be at the level of Ricky Gervais in order to be able to do this.
Yes, that's exactly right. You need to have the protections of the king, even when you piss the king off, right? When you say a thing that really rankles the king. But then you also have to be careful about how you say things. You have to make sure that you're not ever, pointing the finger at the king himself.
Yes.
Right. And there's very few who know how to do that. And there's when Ricky Gervais went down the pathway, very much what you're saying, John, when Ricky Gervais did brilliant thing, like when he was at the Oscars awards or whatever, which was one of the most glorious things I've ever seen. Right.
Yeah.
When he just called them out to their face. He was already a well-established, successful star at that point, and he didn't care if he made, and he wasn't living an extravagant lifestyle, so he didn't care if he got any more contracts or made any more money, etc.
Yeah.
Now, I suspect there's another piece to Ricky is that he also knew his audience very well and knew that would endear him to them, far more, and that he would always have a place, and he would always have. And so there was a bit very much to you were saying, reckless abandon of, well, they're going to kill me. They're going to kill me. But I'm going to say this thing.
Right? Yeah, you're dead right. I mean, you can see even leaving aside the kind of going against the woke issue, although somewhat related, some of the comedy he does is really like it's beyond the line of what would normally be acceptable. Like he takes on subjects that are kind of off the charts and he does them. And he more or less dares his audience to make an issue of it, and they don't. They don't.
The court jester, because he has the protections, and he's got the protections of some members of the court. He's got the protections of the king, but he's really got the protections of the people, because he's also speaking on behalf of the people. That's the court jester's role, by the way, always is to speak on behalf of the people to the king.
Yes,
in the king's court with all the knives and the poisons and everything else that, right?
Yes. A friend of mine from the United States who came to Britain to work and did okay, but not. He was a fantastic comedian, but he was very much in that vein. Now he didn't necessarily couch it in the same kind of terms that I'm couching it. I mean, he wouldn't ever,
of course,
admit to being anti-woke as such. Not because he's not, or not because he thinks that's a bad thing to be, but simply he's irritated by the idea that comedy should become the creature of just reaction, back and forth, ricochet mentality, and that he's in some way, if you want to kind of be a new voice, you have to go in this direction. But he found like that even within the comedic establishment in the United Kingdom, there was huge hostility to him.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't like being called out. They didn't like being laughed at.
A lot of court jesters were killed, poisoned, or just stabbed. Right? So there is a true comedy in you touched on it or stated it openly, but to me, true comedy is true courage.
Yes.
It's true courage. It's the courage to be bluntly, brutally, totally honest with yourself and everybody else. And it's the courage to speak that honesty, that truth, knowing full well that you are going to, by nature, piss off and maybe even violently piss off any number of people.
Yeah. And the best comedy is very often born in darkness.
Right. Always.
Like I often hear people talk about, in Samuel Beckett, as being an absurdist writer, and because of these characters, who are particularly in these novels, and also in some of the plays like Godot and so on, these kind of shambling male characters, elderly male characters, with these their buckety walks and their kind of streams of consciousness, their limbs shooting out in all directions as they walk along, and this is absurdist. These were my uncles. I recognize these guys.
Yeah.
Because they come from the pain, the passion of Ireland, from the historical passion of Ireland, which is of creating all sorts of grief, obviously, but also creating people who necessarily turn into eccentrics, into characters in order to survive at the margins of that society.
Well, it's the thing that I've always really appreciated about traditional classical Irish is the joy and mirth amongst this pain, the immense pain and morosity of life.
Yes. Patrick
That's
Kavanagh,
a true Irish person, right?
Yeah. Patrick Kavanagh, the Irish poet, used to say that tragedy is merely underdeveloped comedy.
Yeah.
Another great one. Tragedy
Beautiful.
plus time equals comedy.
Oh.
Titanic, 9/11, whatever you want to call it. Tragedy plus time equals comedy.
So give me 1 second. There is, when the court, which now controls the patronage, does not allow for the court jester to speak truth, then you don't have comedy anymore. You have mockery. And mockery and comedy are not the same thing. And if we, to your point, I remember, we just lost Catherine O'Hara, right, from Second City TV. And may she rest in peace. She gave us some great characters. I loved her in Second City as a comedic person, but I loved her as Kevin's mom in Home Alone.
Oh,
I love her roles as mom and in Beetlejuice, and you know what I mean? And it's interesting. She said, somebody asked her, this comedic genius, and somebody asked her, what role do you want to be remembered for? And she said, as a mother. I want to be remembered for my role as a mother. Right. And so it's just astounding to me that two of the greatest, depictions of a mother in the modern era were both her. Right.
Yeah.
But she was also a comedic genius. She was brilliant. I watched in the United States starting in the 70s, right? And really maybe around the time of Rodney Dangerfield, later part of Rodney Dangerfield, and some others. But let's say around the time that Sam Kinison died, comedy changed fundamentally. And it went from court jester speaking truth to power and finding joy and mirth and pain and misery to mockery.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we have now is pretty much just mockery.
Well, is there another duality in this too, Ian? Where, and I think this is very striking. If you divide comedy by the Atlantic, like American comedy tends to be about, it's existential. It's about man in the world and God in the heavens, and the question of what the fuck, right? If you come over to Britain, what you get is more kind of social political comedy. It's kind of ideological almost by nature. Even Monty Python in a sense was in ways. Yeah. And so that's a very clear distinction. And when you look at what's happened in the COVID thing, for example, there's a very brilliant comedian in Ireland that I've been kind of very interested in. Tommy Tiernan is his name. And he's a genius. He has the capacity to kind of, spit out the Irish personality in a few lines. His eye is acutely, it's amazing. But in the last few years, he has been completely silent about one subject, and that is the COVID episode. And I've been to his performance, and I watch him and I wait for him to say something, because he talks about everything. He doesn't talk about this. And it seems to me that must be this. That must be an awareness that his audience is now so got at that he can no longer actually exercise his craft in the spontaneous way that he once would have, and in the reckless way, because he was as reckless as Gervais in lots of ways, and he got into huge trouble years ago when he went to America and made some, let's say, anti-Jewish humor. Let's put it like that. And he came home well shamefaced and stripped of his medals and so on. So. But that's an interesting thing now. You see that we live in a different world. Now, maybe we always live to some extent in this world, but nothing like we do now. And that means that actually it's almost impossible, isn't it? If you're on the side that is opposed to the power, to expect the comedians to join you, or the most of them.
Yeah, so what a wonderful question, or a powerful question. Again, patronage. Comedians are entertainers. They don't create a thing for themselves. So they are always dependent upon power. They're always dependent upon patronage in its many forms. But so that's true. And that's in, a heavy influence. Some of the funniest things I hear are, people in person who are saying, are being comedians. And the funniest things that quite literally choke up laughing, all those things happen in combat without exception, right? Where you can almost not sight your gun on the enemy because you're laughing your ass off so hard, right? I wonder, John, if there is a time where the conflicts and the tension and the balance and the power of the court has gone so heavily to the resentfuls that there's no amount of comedy that will true comedy showing truth to power that will change anything, or that will come through. And maybe right,
yeah, or perhaps it has to get worse before, because I think the implication of what you're saying there, and this is kind of an addendum, kind of addendum what I was saying about Ireland. That the comedy, the particular humor of the Irish personality is as though formulated as a form of gristle between the bone,
scar tissue. It's scar tissue. Yeah.
And so there's almost what you said there. The thought occurred to me, is all great humor, is it gallows humor ultimately?
Yes, because gallows humor is ultimate truth.
Yes.
And I think you just articulated something I never really thought about, but I think you're absolutely right. In order for us to get back to true humor, everything's got to get worse.
Yeah. That's right. What I believe. That's what I believe. And then it will become, in a bizarre way, it will become funny, because actually this is something, you see, isn't this the thing though, that our culture thinks of humor as comedy, as light entertainment or something like that. Whereas it isn't anything like that at all.
No, it's the highest form it is the highest literary form, far above novels, far above poetry. Comedy, particularly also because of its, immediacy of comedy, right? Comedy is breathing, living literacy, speaking absolute truth in a way that people laugh over, that connects with them to such a degree that they have an involuntary laughter.
Yes. So you could...
sorry to interrupt, is I've interviewed Roseanne Barr a couple times, and one of the things she said on the first time we spoke is that's her favorite thing about comedy, is because no matter how hardline you are about an ideology, if something is truly funny, even if it's just for a moment, your lips will curl, and you can't even stop it. You can hate the person, you can kill the jester, but there is a split second where you're like you're not so, and it's
well
it's
played.
Reflexive. It's you hit the shin and it goes up. Yeah. Sorry, keep going, John.
Yeah, I was thinking there that maybe a good definition. Well, no, there's no such thing as a good definition of comedy, but the ultimate perception of reality it's in that territory that the comedian is, he's in a certain sense he's beyond the poet
Yes,
in his
that's what I'm saying.
perception,
Yeah,
razor-like perception.
yeah. The
And
poet
in,
is looking backwards. The comedian is looking now.
mm,
Right. And that's why the improv comedians, really good improv comedians, are just unreal good. Right. And that's what Catherine O'Hara was at Second City. Right. Brilliant. The improv comedians that get you into that involuntary laughter, very much, Tommy, to what you're saying. It doesn't matter what your ideology is, but they get you into that place. That's the one, the literary one who's speaking truth.
yeah, the one who can get you to laugh at your own beliefs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That recognition of, oh shit, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the best feeling.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's the court jester's role. The court jester's role was to show the king himself.
They had no clothes. Yeah.
Right. That's exactly right. But the court jester had to do it extraordinarily carefully, right?
Because you get your head chopped off.
Unreal fine. Yeah, exactly. Right. Or you give some faction in the court more power than it should have because you called out the king in front of everybody in some place, right? So there's this very nuanced, careful thing you have to do. But yes, you have to show at the same time as you're showing the king that he has no clothes, you also have to show him he has a shield and a sword.
Is that true? I mean, yes, but think of King Lear and the Fool. I mean, it appeared that the Fool had almost absolute license to say anything to the king, to Lear.
In some cases, yeah. If they give me a second. If they were truly the fool, yes. And that was because the king could just say, well, that's just a fool. Right? So when they say fool, they mean clinically insane. Right?
Yes,
that's what that'll word.
But that is disingenuous, though, isn't it? I mean, on Lear's part, is that because he hired the fool's qualifications were not foolishness, were not foolishness.
Correct. So so the fool, right? The fool, again, the court jester, is also the pinnacle of acting.
Yes.
Because they have to play a character, right? So, in acting, and you'd know this far better than me, but they say that the hardest role for somebody to play in acting is to play the fool, is to play somebody who's actually an idiot.
Yes.
Because the nuance is necessary for somebody intelligent enough to be able to act at that level is somebody with superior capacities. And then they have to figure out how to play the fool and make it real.
Well,
you can't fumble through that.
Well, it's counterintuitive because it's acting, I imagine, is something you prepare for. To truly play the fool, I can play the fool if you put me in a boardroom meeting about I don't know, supply chain economics. Because I'm not acting. I have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. What I couldn't do is say, pretend like you don't know podcast. Like everything I do, just watch, the entire thing. You can't play it because it's by definition, you can't be a bumbling idiot. You can't go through a haunted house and pretend like you're not going to be. If you've gone through it a million times, you're like, I know if there's about to be a jump scare. That's my point.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the situation that we're in, it seems to me that certain characters. Okay, I remember actually one time. I can't remember the name of the comedian, British comedian. Tony Blair, when he came into power first, everybody supported him, it seemed, pretty much. He was like a new kind of broom. He was this kind of clean-cut hero arriving in Downing Street. I was in London at the time, and I could feel that, viscerally. And it took a long time for some people to let go of that. But one of the interesting things about it was, there's a comedian called Rory Bremner, who was an excellent mimic. And he did a show on TV, on BBC, I think it was. And he was the first to you see, because when new personalities come on, they tend not to be funny. Now, maybe Trump is an exception, but we'll come back to that. Because they're heroic in the beginning. They're flawless. They are the new broom. They are the people who are, going to clean away the the manure of the previous regime, and so on and so on. And that was very true with Tony Blair, where it was almost impossible, not alone to laugh at him, but it was impossible to actually criticize him for a long time, but other than in the kind of pantomime way that the Conservative Party would do anyway. And then one night, Rory Brimler did a sketch in which he dealt with this. He got this, and it was about fundamentally it was based on the relationship between Blair and Alistair Campbell, who was his press attaché. And there was this guy John Snow from Channel 4. The sketch started with John Snow interviewing Tony Blair in his office, and it was kind of a bit of normal, quite funny banter between them, or script between them. And then suddenly this guy appeared from the wings, with a newspaper under his arm, and he's just going and he just looks around and he looks at Blair and he looks at Snow and he says, "What's going on?" Oh, and Blair gets up. It was Rimmer was playing Blair. He says, "Well, she's just doing some interview I asked her to do." And okay, so he says to the Alistair Campbell character says to Jon Snow, "Sling your hook. Oh, you've had your lot. Get out." And Blair tries to intervene, and Campbell says, "Shut up." And when Jon Snow is about to leave, Campbell goes over to Blair and he takes the newspaper and he puts it under his nose and he points to the headline and he says, "Did you fucking say that?" And immediately people understood what the joke was.
Yeah.
About Blair.
It had broken the invincibility. It had severed the invincibility. Right. So give me 1 second. That was a very dangerous thing to do too, by the way. But
yes, it was at the time. Very dangerous.
Yeah.
It's almost like impossible. It's something you can't predict.
Yeah. A comedian, a true comedian, a true court jester has to be someone who is someone who has superior intellect, charisma, and linguistic capacities, but zero desire to be, to sit on the throne. Right? They have to be somebody that has zero desire to power beyond the immense power that they have of speaking truth to power. Right? So we run around in our world today and we think these people with a bunch of money have power, and virtually none of them do. We think these people that have these big titles like Blair, et cetera, have power. They don't. They're filling a role. But that some entertainer that's made millions of dollars, hundreds of millions, and done all these movies that they're real and they have power. They don't. They're a construct. Real power is, and I had this conversation with a billionaire friend of mine, a very close friend of mine some years ago. And he didn't like it. This is about a decade ago, maybe. And I said, because he was like, "Yeah, it's all about money. It's all about wealth. It's all about power. It's all about, these power relationships, et cetera." And I was like, "Nah, I know people who can pick up the phone. They got no money, but they'll pick up the phone because they have a relationship with somebody and they'll have a conversation and something's going to happen in the world." That's real power. So why would I want to sit on the throne and have knives and poison at me and my kids' throats all the time? Why would I try to earn a title and, go be a lord and take on all that battle every day? Why would I want to be this, or this if I actually have the power to speak to power, truly connect with them and speak to them in a way that it moves them in how they conduct the exercise of what power they do have? That's the real power.
Well, it's a very interesting thing, Ian, that is, because it reminds me that almost every Western politician of the present moment has had a humor bypass. They've had, they couldn't make a joke to save their lives, apart from one, Trump. And Trump is a very interesting one because his sense of humor and his capacity to make people laugh is his shield in many respects. because that's what makes people afraid of him to whatever extent they are afraid, when they are, and allows him to strike back. And he does, and that's his principle. If you're attacked, strike back 10 times harder. So it's interesting that in a certain sense, humor is part of the battle that Trump has fought to get where he is.
When we realize that Trump is the court jester, everything starts to make sense. Right? And
Yes.
Very much to what I just articulated. The man with power is the one who can speak to power. And what is power? What is power actually? It's not the king. It's
That's
the
really
people. It's the people that will come to the support of the king. Trump is the court jester, and he's speaking to the people on behalf of the king.
It's very interesting you say that, Ian, because when I think back now to the multiple interviews that Trump did as a young man, and he was always asked this question: would you run for president?
Yeah.
And he always said something, the same thing, more or less, which was that, no, I would prefer to help somebody else to get there. I would prefer to support somebody.
Yeah.
And it's almost in the end that the fool decided, fuck it, nobody's going to do it. Nobody can do it. I can do it. I'm going to do it.
Well, yes. But what he also realized at some point, most likely, is that the presidency is not the king. The president of the United States is not the king. See, following on from a true English tradition, our king is the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And the subjects of the king are those who are the constitutionalists and the people, it's not the government. It's not the president. At some point, the fool realized, I can take that job on. I'm still in support of the king because the king isn't the president. The king isn't any of these structures. It's the Constitution.
And the people are sovereign, are they not?
Yes. In the English system, even there in the United Kingdom, right? Not there in Ireland now, unfortunately, because you all decided you're going to side with the Continentals against us, our ancient enemy. But even in England, constitutionality reigns, and it has since the 800s. And it was a king that put that in motion, and kings that have sustained it since. And unfortunately, 1688, we're conquered at the crown level. We're still subject to that. But even in English civilization, this is why I harp on it so much. The Constitution, English constitutionality, most precisely articulated in the U.S. Constitution, is the actual crown. It is the actual king. And what does that crown represent? That crown represents the covenant between the throne, the king, the Constitution, and the people.
Yes.
So, right? So the king does not exist, even in the pure monarchical sense, if the king does not have the people. And I don't mean as chattel.
So how would you then portray Trump's relationship to power in the present moment? To whom is he giving? To the people, isn't that right?
People, correct. He is giving power. He is the court jester speaking truth to power. And what is that power? It's the people. And you have to speak in the language of the people. You have to get them, take all the flowery, colory words and all the fancy stuff out and throw that away and speak directly to the people about power. And by the way, what is he speaking to? He's speaking to the king, the people, and he's speaking to them about themselves. How many of the things that Trump say, these things that he says, the stuff that comes out of his mouth, really actually applies to the common man in America?
Yes.
A lot of it, because we are complicit in this system, this regime that we've allowed to emerge. We, the common men, we, the king, collectively, are complicit in all of this.
Yes.
Yes, he's calling out so-and-so and this and that, but he's really talking to us because those people are in those positions of power because we allowed it.
Yes, and implicitly he's saying to us, to the Americans and to the people of the world who are interested, they can't do this unless you agree.
unless you're complicit. Now let me show you yourself.
Yes.
And
Yes.
no, yeah, go ahead.
So it's a misunderstanding to see, and this always is implicit in Trump's personality, to my mind. Although obviously there are things about him that I don't understand, but it's always like that. He is not interested in power.
No, because he knows he can't have it. Because he knows there's no man that has power, no single man. No collection of man has real power. It is all of us. And this again goes back to the uniqueness of the English civilization for more than 1,000 years. And again, it was 3 kings that made sure that this was the core of us. The people are sovereign. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, now you've actually stumbled onto something there, that is really, really not, I don't say it's radically new, but I think it's something that doesn't get said. Very much at all. That actually, what's the crux of all of this is that all the things that we are terrified of, all the things that loom over us like dark clouds, all these things are in a sense a figment of our lack of courage.
Yes, John. Yes, we are afraid to be the court jester in our own life. To call out the hypocrisy, to make the distinction, to put in the court jester thinks a lot, very deeply, or they don't survive, right? Or they say something that's not on the mark, doesn't get that involuntary curve in the lip of your enemy, much less a guffaw from your friends, right? We're all too, who were the bravest, and Tommy, I suspect maybe you were one of these, but who were the bravest kids in school when we were growing up? It wasn't the big tough buff kid or the buff guy. It wasn't the sexy, attractive girl. It was the kid that made everybody laugh.
Yeah.
And not just by being an idiot, bumbling fool, but the kid that made us laugh because they would say some non sequitur thing that was like, boom.
Well, there's an interesting thing about
the
Trump.
Involuntary. It's the key opening the door. Where even if you hate him, you're like, that was fucking funny,
right?
That was fucking. I'm gonna kill him, but that was fucking hilarious.
Well, somebody else might want to try to beat you up, and then somebody else is like gonna go talk to that guy, and say, nah, and let yeah.
I remember years ago when David Icke appeared on the Terry Wogan show. I've watched that again recently. I didn't see it at the time, but I've seen it a few times. It's a very interesting clip. It's up there on YouTube. And David Icke is talking about the idea that he represents the Godhead in the world. And Wogan is baiting the audience against him, on this count. And at one point, the audience laughs at something David says. And David acknowledges the laughter as some kind of acclamation of what he said, which is ambiguous. It's not that clear. But Wogan immediately goes in and says, you don't understand. He says, they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you.
They're not, that was not a comedy laughter. That was a mockery laughter.
Yes. Now, here's the interesting thing that I was going to say, and there's another thing I want to come back to.
And it's a test, I'm terribly sorry, but the ability for the individual on the receiving side to distinguish between the two is a test by the people of them. Yeah, terribly sorry, John. Yeah.
No. But I'm impatient to make this point because Trump is laughed at by his opponents, by his enemies. But he's laughed much more loudly with by his supporters.
Yes. You know what the worst thing from 2020 to 2024 was? We didn't have all those hilarious bangers coming out of Trump's Twitter account almost daily.
He is you don't have to like him, dude. He is, I think, one of the funniest people to ever. You can hate him. You're free to hate him, whatever. He's one of the funniest fucking people.
He is the court jester.
One of the funniest people on the planet.
But now I want to bring it to a different level because I think that there's something very weird here. As we're going back to Beckett and the existentialism and all that, and the idea of laughter being being gallows, all of it being gallows humor, really, ultimately, the best of it. That tells us that, laughter is a fundamental element of existence, whether as an antidote or whether as a way of coping, a way of surviving. I mean, I think that the funniest peoples tend to be the ones who've suffered the most in history. But here's the thing. Look at the state of what is called faith, religion in our societies. It seems to me that as a sine qua non of getting to heaven, you need to believe that God doesn't have a sense of humor.
That's why I left the church. Right? Because humor, always true humor, not mockery, right? But sometimes mockery, if it's done right, it's not just made up, stuff, right? But true humor and mockery is base reality, speaks truth. And if there's a system or a regime or, a social norm that doesn't allow for it, that system regime is not real.
I've always felt that God has to be not only the smartest and the most loving, and God also by definition has to be the funniest motherfucker.
Oh, I think he's laughing whatever, the divine God. I think they're laughing.
It has to be like not just funny, the funniest. Like not only should it be like, unending waves of love and understanding and wisdom, he also has to just be the funniest ever.
Well, this is the point. And also there's the point that taking whatever, the Christian mentality or whatever mentality pretty much in any religion you can think of, the idea of a created being with a sense of humor. Where did it come from? Yeah. Well, clearly the creator
made in the
put
image.
in the fundamental mechanism of that to begin with.
Well, what is the most powerful counter to any mockery? Memes, right? Memetics are about making people have that little uncontrollable guffaw laugh. I see them once every 3 or 4 days. Somebody will meme something I understood or I stopped, but they'll put it in just the right way. And I will quite literally laugh.
Yeah.
I don't laugh a whole lot, right? But I will literally laugh. And it's like the most extraordinary thing. And what are they doing every single time? They're mocking somebody. And they're not mocking the person generally. They're mocking the idea, right? They're mocking this artificial idea that somebody has. And in that mockery, they're bringing us back to reality. They're letting us know this sophisticated linguistic construct, idea, whatever narrative isn't real.
Well, it's interesting you brought up another duality there, dualism there, which is laughter. Laughter isn't always or necessarily mostly an expression of
joy,
of spontaneous mirth in the face of something. So much of laughter is actually simply polite acknowledgement of something.
Yeah, so the only ones I actually find that I laugh at are pretty damn dark.
Yeah.
I mean, they are dark, so for somebody in the life I've lived and where I've been and all the things I've studied and thought through, et cetera, for somebody to get me to a place where I laugh like that, every single one of them without exception is some of the darkest but realist shit. And why am I laughing? I'm recognizing the darkness, but I'm also honoring the person who figured out how to articulate that unbelievably dark thing in that kind of a clever way that it's just like, oh shit. Right?
See, I always hated the expression LOL on Twitter, but actually it is a reminder of something very fundamental. Laugh out loud means real laughter, Yes. Like if you ever, I'm sure maybe you haven't tried this, but if you're in a group of people, like say a dinner party or whatever party or, a meeting or whatever, and you listen to the laughter, it's very instructive because almost never is it about jokes. It's a form of politeness. It's a form of oil that greases the community sufficiently to enable it to function at whatever level it needs to function. So people don't, it's actually, and what is most terrifying about it is when you actually then stop listening to everybody else's laughter and start listening to your own and realize that you are engaging in a call and response function with the laughter of others.
So, John, I rarely laugh at all. And when I do, people get really uncomfortable.
I'm laughing now and it's real.
I mean, I say that kind of, as fun, but I mean it seriously, right? I'm a fairly serious person. And when I start laughing at something, people often get really uncomfortable, like, what the hell just happened? Right. And I find that's the way with a lot of guys I know, right? They don't laugh. The point being is that, to your point, I don't laugh along. Yeah. I don't small talk. I don't know how. I've never known how since I was a child, right? I don't small talk. I don't laugh along. I don't laugh at usually either, right? Because most things don't rise to the necessity to need to mock somebody. Most people are just foolish. But generally, when I'm in a public communal situation, I start laughing. It actually is inappropriate to the laughter you're talking about, because it's like, you just crossed a line of stupidity, and you just crossed a line of thinking you're way more powerful than you are. And I'm going to laugh. And I know that when I laugh, people are going to pay attention, and then they're going to look at me and go like, what just happened?
Yeah, because they will notice. They will
notice. Exactly. And then they'll figure it out what it is, or they'll ask me.
Yeah. Right? But, I mean, like, there are different contexts in which laughter gets louder. Like, for example, if a dating couple are, you fancy one or one, you can tell by the laughter.
Yeah.
And it isn't real laughter. It's fake laughter,
Well, and that's the other thing though, John, is, man, being a writer and a poet, or a poet and a writer, right? When a couple, and I know this from my own life too, right? When a couple really are compatible and they really are into one another, their laughter you can tell, because their laughter is real. It's not about, as you say, right? It's not about a specific thing, or they're just joyful. They have that mirth in them.
Yeah. Milan Kundera, the Czech novelist, he in one of his books, I can't remember which one, he actually wrote about this. And there's a funny story about this, actually, I'll tell it after. But he said there are two kinds of laughter. There is the laughter of angels and the laughter of devils. And he said only the laughter of devils is actually funny. It's actually based on real humor. He said the laughter of angels is to drown out the laughter of the devils.
Alan Watts had a great quote. He said, laughter and crying are the same thing. They're involuntary surprise takes at excitement, or something along those lines. I always think that they are kind of, laughter and crying they're just sort of absurd reactions to overwhelming stimuli. Reflexive. Yeah.
Some people will go from laughter into crying.
That's the whole I'm crying laughing, right?
Yeah. Well, so that, in other words, that the humor is dark, devil, the laughter of, I'm not necessarily saying I understand or agree with him, but I don't think, I'm not entirely clear on his point, except to say that, like, real laughter is dark, as we're saying, and it's kind of fiendish as well. When you get into it, like, it's kind of like you are looking at the forbidden. You're noticing the forbidden. You are acknowledging that you have stumbled into something that is, like, not permitted, in a sense.
Isn't Satan, Lucifer, and the demons fallen angels? And they're fallen because they ate or looked at or studied at the tree of knowledge?
Yes.
So would that not make both angelic, that those that haven't eaten from or read at or studied at the tree of knowledge, their laughter is mirth, but those who have eaten from have fallen, right, into darkness because of, the tree of knowledge? Would their laughter not be far more rich, far more deep, and about actual things, and not just a sense and a feeling? They're both angels. It's just one went into knowledge, and what do you find in knowledge? Darkness.
Yes. The question about mockery, is that a valid distinction, Ian? I mean, is it a clear one between mockery and comedy?
Yeah, so the great question. So I think what we have to do there is parse out the kinds of mockery. The one that's involuntary, because somebody just said something so retarded and stupid and so dangerous that you just got to mock it, right? And the other kind of mockery is people who are just shitty human beings who are just talking shit about other human beings. And that's what most of comedy is now, and it has been for the last, increasingly over the last 20, 30 years. It's just people talking shit about people. That's not mockery. That's just being a horrible fucking human being. But true mockery is, it gets back to when I laugh, people get uncomfortable. True mockery is, you just said something really stupid. That's dangerous. And I'm gonna take that down and you down in a way that there's no way to refute it. And I'm going to mock you, and I'm going to do it cleverly, and I'm going to do it brilliantly. But I'm going to make sure that concept and idea and that little sense of power you got gets taken down a peg.
Isn't there another category, or maybe it's something that happens between men, working men in general. We in Ireland we call it slagging, where somebody's they're constantly taking the piss out of each other.
Yes, that's exactly what I just said, though, John. That's exactly what I said. Right? Yeah. We are constantly, as men, challenging one another's sense of our own power. We have to, right? Because we have to live in reality, and in reality, there are status hierarchies, and we are not all equal. And when shit goes sideways, we're really not all equal. Right. And so we constantly have to test. Now, there's two sides to it, though. One side is to let the guy know, hey, don't get ahead of yourself. The other side, though, is to see how they respond. And maybe they have improved their status. Maybe they have changed in some way that we weren't paying attention to and didn't see. It's a test. Yes. Right.
Yes, that's right. So, it's the old one about, the first day at work, you get off the carpenter, get a glass, come back with a glass hammer, and everybody has a laugh at this, when the guy comes back and says they couldn't get one or whatever. That's the start of the hardening up process.
Well, in the assessment, right? Because we're always being assessed. And how does a real man assess another real man? He mocks him. Now, he's got to be careful about that, because you don't want to tear other men down. That's not the purpose either, right? That's a misunderstanding. But I want to both give them a check and a reality check on their sense of their power, like the new guy that comes in, right? I've had it done to me numerous times when I went in the Army, when I went in Special Forces. I was much older than the guys around me when I went in, much older. And there was still that check on, hey, old man, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a real thing, because what they're looking for is that line, fuck them if you can't take a joke.
Yes.
Well, that's the thing, is if you can't handle laughter, how the fuck are you gonna take on anything?
I know you're not gonna fold under gunfire.
Well, even not gunfire, even just fucking, you're the new delivery guy.
Yeah.
Listen, if you can't take a joke, how are you gonna, how are you gonna deal with an asshole customer?
Correct. And how well, this is also. Like, I know guys from our school days, who couldn't take a joke in school. Now we're all in our mid to late 50s. And virtually every single one of them can take, the ones that's still around and the ones that have done anything in life have learned how to take a joke and how to give it back. Right?
Yes.
They've learned. So, we want it very much. I do love this English statement, to take the piss out of somebody, right? I think it's a brilliant statement. But at the same time, we're also assessing, because maybe our assessment of that person wasn't quite right either. And we're not going to know that until we see and feel and hear the reaction back from them. Right? Yes. Because that is you want to understand a human being's, male or female's, emotional regulation capabilities. Hit them with a little bit of humor, mockery, or hit them with a lot. And you will see in the way in which they neurophysiologically and linguistically and emotionally respond, how much control that person has over their emotions and their emotional systems. And that's the real test. Because when things get difficult or things go truly sideways, you want somebody who is in total and absolute control and constantly improving in their total and absolute control of their emotions.
How does that play out then between men and women? Would you generalize in any way in the context of men and women as comedians and as people capable of laughing at themselves?
Great question. I'm living it now. I have a teen daughter, and I've had to making mistakes sometimes, had to figure out these differences, right? And again, having gotten it wrong sometimes. And now I think I'm settling in 17, almost 18 years into it, right? With girls, you have to be playful, not mocking. You can never mock a girl. They don't have that wiring like men do, right? So you need to be playful. You also can't be too serious. You have to be playful because you also can't be too blunt and direct with a girl. You can't say a thing directly. It hurts too much, right? Or it angers them too much. Usually hurts too much, right? For the good ones. So you have to be playful with girls, but never mocking. And there's some men you can't mock either, but what you do, because they just can't handle it, right? They just can't process it. So what do you do with them? You go, okay, great, good guy, like to hang out, but I'm not going to depend on you beyond this level for these things, right? With girls, you can't do the mocking. You can't do it at all. And so then it's a matter of the degree of the playfulness, because sometimes if you play too much, it's like a cat with a mouse, and they feel that, and they feel threatened and overwhelmed. And so it's a delicate dance of, okay, how do I say a thing? How do I test and probe playfully, but not to such an overwhelming extent that they feel like they're being threatened or challenged?
And there's another element then, which is that, you very often hear when women are asked, what do you look for in a man? And an awful lot of women will say his ability to make me laugh.
Yes. And the best ones, right? The best experiences I've had with women were where I was looking at something that they were doing, and it was foolish, not stupid, but foolish. And I would find a playful way to say it. And then they'd see it and they'd start laughing at it. They would laugh with you and at themselves at the same time. And the bond that connection where the man found a way to truly communicate with the woman such that she could see something about herself, but in a way that wasn't, abusive, and it wasn't destructive, and it wasn't challenging. It was just, I see this. I see you. Do you see it? Right? Mm-hmm. That's extraordinary. Those are some of in my 58 years of life, to this day, those are some of the most extraordinary experiences that I've had in my life. And I remember one particular Lebanese woman in Paris some years ago. And there was 2 or 3 times we had this just playful banter on the just off the Champs-Élysées there. And I don't remember what the hell we were saying or what we were talking about. I just remember the connection that I was able to find a way in my foolishness, but I was able to find a way to say something playfully that helped her see something about herself that we could both laugh at. And it happens, 1, because the laughter is not fake, and 2, the change in them happens immediately.
So you're right. This is it. You're right over the target here, I believe, Ian, which is that laughter is a release of nervous energy.
Yes. Tension. It's tension. Yes.
Which therefore means something, which therefore tells us something about the world around the laughter, much more than, and the conditions that the participants are living in and dealing with, and that it somehow heals them. It somehow heals them in their relationships and individually in themselves. And therefore, how we dispense laughter in a society is no small thing.
No. Laughter for real laughter, right? Not the artificial laughter, but real laughter in humans is like purring in cats.
Yeah.
It heals them.
Yeah. And it's also involuntary.
And it's involuntary. It's like laughter, genuine mirth and laughter is like purring in cats. It's bonding.
What you
It's
said about the
healing.
release of nervous energy, I think that was actually the Alan Watts quote. Crying and laughing are the release of nervous energy. I think
The
I butchered it.
problem,
I think, yeah.
yeah, the problem with the crying part versus the laughter part is that the crying part doesn't, it releases the pressure, but it doesn't change anything.
No.
When somebody has a good cry, it doesn't change anything. When somebody has a good laugh, something changed.
Well, yeah, I would say that a good cry does
I'm not
change.
saying good cries aren't important,
No,
right?
no,
I'm just,
what I mean is it does
yeah,
technically change. I'd say it brings you from, I don't know, DEFCON 1 up to DEFCON 2. You're still fucked, but
that might be.
you're a little less in like a panicky, like, okay. It's, you're like, okay, this sucks, but you got that first, whatever, the burp out of the way, the first, whatever out of the way.
Well, isn't
You're
it
sick and you're throwing up. You immediately feel better after you're not healed. You still have a fever, but you do feel better than you did 30 seconds ago.
I won't take that from you, right? But isn't it isn't it interesting as we went into the peak of wokeism that the emphasis was on crying, including all these men's bitching crying circles,
You see fucking
and a
who's
diminishment and a reduction of laughing.
all the late nights. Tim Dillon said, he goes, late night TV now used to be comedians, now it's men crying. I mean,
It's
Jimmy Kimmel
estrogenic.
literally just did it last week. He cries fucking 9 times a year on TV. It's like,
So why? Because
Yeah.
the crying part might relieve some tension, but it doesn't change anything fundamentally. Whereas laughing, when somebody involuntarily laughs, neurophysiologically and neurolinguistically, something has actually wiring wise changed.
Yes.
And right. And it's the same with mockery between men, between healthy men, right? Because generally what will come out of that mockery, laughter.
Yes. And crying is a surrender. Is a surrender either to the other person or the group.
To the inevitability.
Yes. Whereas laughter is power. It's an expression of power, isn't it?
Laughter is, for all intents and purposes, laughter is fuck you.
It brings it down a peg.
Right? It's like, fuck you. You're not in control. This thing's not in control. Right. And again, that's why these dark memes, right? And very much to what you guys are saying. When I see one of these dark memes, it happens maybe 3 times a week, maybe once every other week, but it'll be some dark meme and it'll get it straight right. And I will laugh involuntarily. Why? Because it released tensions that I have over some cognitive process that I'm dealing with in some battlefield that I'm paying attention to. At the same time, it gave me a little key to where I don't need to have all this complex thinking to understand that space anymore. I don't need to put all this energy into figuring out that, no, this motherfucker just used 3 words in a picture. And
it's freedom. It's
freedom. Yes, John.
It's
very good.
That understanding.
Thank you.
You get. Sometimes you get this understanding. It's very similar, I think, the feeling that you have a deep problem. Maybe a logistical problem, maybe the problem of your life, your work, your relationship, whatever. And then one moment you're standing there somewhere in a bar or whatever,
yes.
and then you get, you know that there's a way out.
John, this is why, one, I was really disappointed when I found out I wasn't Irish in my early 50s. That one came as a shock. But this is one of the things I always loved about the Irish, and particularly the Irish pub on a Friday, right? Maybe sometimes a Thursday, but true Irish pubs, right? And one of the things we're blessed with, we used to be till the last 15 years, we were blessed in San Francisco to have, and Seattle to have original Irish pubs, some of which were still in the original family that are like 117, 120 some odd years old, right? But that was one of my favorite things as a young man in the pub, is you could be dealing with, and everybody there was dealing with all kinds of shit, right? Why? Because they're all fucking Irish, or they want to be. So they're all dealing with all kinds of shit because that's what the Irish do, right? And you'd be in this morose place and you're having a few pints, maybe you're having a dram, and then somebody out of nowhere would just say some little thing about something, and it would just unlock something. And you're like, that whole pressure of stress, you'd laugh, maybe by yourself, maybe you weren't even talking to him, you'd laugh, and that shit is gone. It's gone because somebody just randomly gave me the key. And this is the thing this is why I say the Irish are the soul of the English speaking peoples. That's why there's been so many great Irish poets, so many great Irish literary figures, playwrights, right? All, why? And orators, speakers, speechwriters and speakers. Why? Because this is a thing that classically, traditionally, the Irish did very, very, very well because they lived in such, under such pressure. Unfortunately for my people, mostly the English, but also the Vikings and others. And so what were the Irish constantly having to do in order to survive as a people and thrive as a people? Constantly figure out ways to reduce down complexity to a way that you could laugh at. Constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's vital. It's vital. And it reflects resilience in a culture, resilience in a people. But by the same token, and it's one of the things we're kind of touching on in this conversation, that something's changed. And I feel this very strongly in my own country now, that one of the things that's changed is that Irish people are losing their sense of humor. That kind of gristle between the bones that are grinding into each other is wearing thin. And they're not able to deal with reality anymore.
Well, they're oppressed by those who can't laugh. They're oppressed by a regime that can only cry, it can't laugh. Right? Back to something you said earlier about the lack of humor. So yes. I will say this. Again, back to something I said earlier, but shit's about to kick off like a gunfight when guys start laughing about the most random shit and it's funny. Right? It's this, if you want to know, David Betts is talking about civil wars already started, et cetera. Okay, well, that's true, all of the academic, but you're going to know when it's going to actually pop off, when the men specifically start laughing again. Because when they start laughing, they've gotten all that complexity out, all the tension and pressure is released, all that shit's gone, and they're like, fuck it. And when you're in that fuck it mind, right? Just that fuck all the shit, fuck all this, we got to do this, there's no other fucking choice. Then all this shit it just becomes funny. It's like, what the fuck were we doing? What the fuck were we thinking? What the fuck?
Yeah.
Right?
Because it's like that moment back in the classroom as a child where you laugh at something and the teacher says, "What's so funny, Mr. Waters?" Perhaps you'd like to share it with the rest of the class.
Yes.
You see, because they don't want you laughing.
Correct. Why? Because you figured out some complex thing and you removed some tension they had intentionally put in there.
Yeah. See, I think this is such a revolutionary thing, that in society, that when it is a humorous society, it is extraordinarily resilient. And almost it's uncapturable, uninvadable. Yeah. It just can't, and this in many respects, it ties into what you said about Trump, that he's the fool.
He's the jester.
He's
not the king, he's the jester.
Yeah. So that we've been seeing it all wrong in a certain sense.
Yes.
What he's speaking to us. We are the king.
Yes.
And we need to listen to him. We don't need to make him king. That's not what he's asking. No. He wants us to listen so that we will use the power that we have.
So we'll be the king again. We will be the king again.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, Ian. I know. Are we going to quit soon? But before we go, after this, each of us is going to have to tell a joke.
Oh, I don't know any jokes. Here's the thing. I'm not very funny. I'm very dry, but I don't really know jokes. I don't remember jokes. I've just never. Yeah. But I will listen to your jokes and Tommy's. I'm sure Tommy's got some jokes. You're both Irish.
I have one.
Okay. You want to go first, Tommy?
I don't know if you're going to be able to follow it.
Because all jokes, all jokes are kind of their oral tradition. They come to us everywhere. I mean, we have no
Yeah,
idea
yeah, yeah, yeah,
who
yeah.
writes these jokes. Can you
Yes.
imagine? And because they're so, some of them are so brilliant, you think this is as good as a poem, you know, and yet you couldn't think of it there. If you make a joke up now, you can't do it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I got
Although I have a friend who can do it very well. I'll tell you, this is a joke which I've heard. It's a slightly long one, not too long, but an atheist is walking across the forest, and the next thing he hears a noise behind him, and he looks around. There's a grizzly bear coming after him, so he starts to run, and he runs through the forest, and he trips on the tree root and falls. And he looks around again, and the grizzly bear is catching up, and he says, "Oh my God!" And suddenly the time freezes, the bear stands still, and the voice in the sky says, "Ha ha! You've been slagging me off for the last 30 years, and now you're calling out my name. I suppose next thing you'll want to become a Christian." So the atheist says, "Well, I suppose that would be a bit hypocritical, but maybe you could make the bear a Christian." And the voice in the sky says, "Okay." And suddenly things start to move again. And the atheist looks around gingerly in the direction of the bear who has fallen to his knees. And the bear says, "Oh God, for what I'm about to receive, please make me truly thankful."
all right. That's good. I was gonna say, as far as dark ones go for EM, I don't know how funny they are. They're dark. Uh, what's the only difference between Anne Frank and Santa Claus? The direction they travel in the chimney.
Oh God.
All right. And then another one. Whoever said white men can't jump didn't watch news coverage of 9/11.
Oh shit.
I don't know how funny they are. They're just
Oh,
kind of
those are
fucked up.
good. Those are good.
I say those because I feel uncomfortable when I say them. That's why I like those two jokes. It's
Because truth is uncomfortable. That's the thing that people
even the
need to
delivery
really
of it, you're not like
understand.
excited for your punch. Like I always have to. I've done it on the show before. I think I've done it with the bald ones, and I'm like, all right, I got one, and it ends the conversation. It's
Well, you see, this is an interesting question. I mean, and Gervais talks about this as well. You know, are there things that you shouldn't joke about? And he says absolutely not.
no.
Not. No,
No.
because comedy is telling the truth.
Hmm.
And there is no truth that can't be said.
And the only thing that refusing jokes about, the only thing that does to a touchy, because the only reason you'd say we can't joke about that is because it's touchy or it's taboo.
It might
By
make
not
them
joking about
cry
it,
instead of laugh.
but nonetheless, regardless, by not making fun of that thing, all you're doing is making it even more fragile.
Correct. You're
And
reinforcing.
eventually,
Yeah.
someone who doesn't give a shit about you is going to poke fun at it. Instead of it being a friend making a joke, it's going to be someone who their goal might be to hurt you, and they're going to hurt you because you have this untried, untested immune system, and they're just going to destroy you. So it's better to make fun of it now.
Or it might have hurt you before, but now it's going to destroy you. Yeah.
Well,
Even
that-
if they're
yeah.
not a malevolent actor. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
that-
yeah.
That's been a characteristic of the woke period, last 15 years, which is like that certain topics are out of bounds for humor or for any kind of commentary that isn't like, condemnatory. And yet, you go back, that goes back. And you can, in this way, you can actually see the history of this much more clearly. Because what does that bring you to? Political correctness, which came in 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And already they were planting those seeds to attack the very possibility that you can express yourself at the fullest extent of human, penetration into the darkness of reality. And so, that in a sense, to actually to do jokes about unmentionable things is absolutely essential. Far from being, dubious in any way.
How else does the jester speak truth to power?
Yeah.
Right? Because again, the truth, the actual truth is uncomfortable.
Well,
there are no, there are truths that are, okay, but the truths that we really need to look at that we don't want to look at are all uncomfortable.
yeah. That it's a very interesting thing, that this whole kind of speech thing, it has caught up with us in this way. I mean, this question of being or not being a free speech absolutist? I mean, I don't think there's any alternative to being a free speech absolutist.
I agree.
I mean, this is the stupid notion that everybody comes up with. I don't know where it came from about the shouting fire in a crowded theater. Well, if there's a fire, yeah, you should shout it. If there isn't, what are you shouting fire for? It's not about free speech. It's about something else. But
stupidity.
Yeah, so we absolutely need absolute free speech.
We do, but there's the counter to that. So there's an interesting thing about the amendments to the U.S. Constitution. The first one is free speech. The second one is the right to bear arms. So you, in order to have true free speech, you also have to have the right to duel. You have to have the right, because somebody, and that doesn't necessarily need to be with a sword or a gun or a knife. Ultimately, it does, right? Yes. Everybody should have the right to say whatever the hell they want to say, whatever comes to their stupid mind, and pay the price for it. Just like, right? And if you remove the mortal coil, right, of the duel, then you don't actually have free speech, because now all you have is unaccountable gibberish.
Well,
with some,
that's brilliant. That's very clear and good. And I think there's a very clear analogy to that in the woke period, because what did woke do? Well, it forbade you from expressing an unauthorized opinion. Right. And if you did, you were punished for it.
Yes.
So it wasn't that
you had no recourse to violence to fix that.
Or even to response, because you were shamed publicly for even...
Well, you had no right to response because you didn't have the freedom and right to challenge them to a duel.
Yes.
You didn't have the freedom and the right to throat punch them.
So they didn't have to answer you. They didn't have to
answer.
Argument.
Correct. So now they can impose whatever they want.
Yeah. You see, that was a complete perversion of the process that you described, which is the honor culture. Isn't this an amazing thing that honor culture, when you think about it, even though the modern society, wrings its hands in horror at the thought of it, but actually, when you drill into it, in every way, it was an equilibrium. It provided equilibrium.
Yes. Yes. And it had a very powerful error self-correction built into it by nature. Right? If you look here in Americas, right, we use the Americas. If you look at the gunfighters in American history, most of them were very polite men, very respectful and very polite. Now, I'm not talking about the criminal guys, et cetera, who ultimately normally met their end either nefariously or by a gunfighter. But it's also with the warrior caste guys, the special operations guys that I've been with from all over the world. They're all very polite. They're very playful. Most of them are very playful, but they're very polite and respectful guys. They'll call you out on your shit, knowing full well that maybe that might go to a fist fight, and it does, right? But we are by nature far more polite, and we self-police our bullshit way more than anybody else. There's a whole lot of things I don't say, not because I don't have the right to say them. It's because it's not going to impact anything positively. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to move anything in the right direction. And maybe there's some way to say it, but I haven't figured it out yet, right? I don't know how to say that thing yet in such a way that it's going to have a positive direction change. So I just don't say it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It has no value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are certain things like chivalry and courtesy that you in given situations, well, it's not that we should go around saying the most extreme thing to each other. It's simply that we need to have that device where it is necessary.
So without the right to violence, you don't have free speech. because without the ability for somebody to pay the price for what they say, if you remove the violence to correct, things that are said that are wrong, incorrect, or very abusive, or even outright enslaving, if you don't have that ability, you don't have free speech. You just have people talking, tyranny and nonsense. And that doesn't, again, need to go to the mortal coil always. Many times it's just you throat punch them or you slap them upside the head.
Yes.
The greatest, when I was younger, I stopped, seeking out fist fights when I was probably in my early 30s, right? I learned more about getting my shit right by getting punched in the face or thrown to the ground or outright pummeled than I've learned in any and all other ways combined. And I am a far better person for it.
Yeah, you see, the first thing they did was they outlawed violence as a mode of communication. And then they rigged the game of argument. So
they made the duel illegal, and then it went from there.
Yeah. So
bring back the duel, and we're all going to be all right.
Yes. Like there's a very interesting case going on in Ireland at the moment. It's been going on for three and a half years. There's a guy called Enoch Burke, who's a teacher, a young guy, who was fired from his job as a teacher for refusing to call a boy dead.
Yeah.
Yes. And this guy spent over 560 odd days in prison because what they're calling contempt of court. But hang on a minute. Why is he in contempt of court? Because they refused to actually apply the Constitution to his case. They refused to hear to acknowledge that the case was about one thing and one thing only, which was compelled speech, the very issue that brought Jordan Peterson to world renown or whatever. And the judges, one after the other, repeated the lie that this had nothing to do with compelled speech. It had nothing to do with transgenderism. It was because of Enoch Burke's response to the headmistress. Now, Enoch Burke
didn't obey. It's because he didn't obey.
Well, the implication was that he was rude or unpleasant in some way.
Yeah.
This man is incapable of being rude or unpleasant in that way. But what did happen was this, that in the court, when these outrages were being perpetrated, these lies were being told by judges, barefaced judges sitting and telling lies for the benefit of the corrupt press. The family, Enoch Burke and his family, would remonstrate with the court. And immediately and always they would be then evicted from the court very forcibly by the police. They were never violent in return. They would try to defend themselves from being injured, but that was it. Yet the story has gone out around Ireland that this case is about contempt of court. Well, now I say one thing, and first of all I say it is not about contempt of court. But in the second place I say, yes, maybe it is. Maybe in the face of a contemptible court, contempt is the only reasonable response.
Yes. So, give me 1 second. Historically, the inevitable outcome of the suppression of the right to make somebody pay for their tyrannical or other use of free speech, it always leads to bloodshed, collapse, and or bloodshed. Always. In the English-speaking people so far, about every 400 years, we fought out this very thing. And the people have restored to themselves the right to use violence.
Well, is the process there, just thinking through the Burke case, is the process there that the state, first of all, acquired to itself, demanded to itself, and claimed to itself a monopoly on the use of force?
Correct.
But maintained the pretense that it was doing this in the name of the people.
Well, no. In defense of free speech, but whose speech? Theirs. Because if they're the only ones who can use violence, then their speech is the only speech that is allowed.
They can say whatever they want.
They can say whatever they want.
Would there be any circumstances that it is possible to allow the possibility that there would be a removal of violence from the equation?
No.
No. It must remain as a fact,
Correct.
as a possible factor.
Correct. And we're seeing it now. We're seeing the inevitable result of it, where they're mutilating kids' genitals.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's gotten that far. They're selling human beings in greater numbers into slavery, outright slavery, open slave markets in North Africa than has ever been as a proportion in human history. All of that's been done in the time of civility. Do you think that most men would have allowed any of this to happen if they hadn't been disarmed? Or if the entire courts, if the elites had put a fraction of the money they put into all this bullshit into legal defense funds for people who use their Second Amendment rights here to stand up to things that were wrong?
Well, there's a very interesting thing, now that's just come into my head, and it should have come into my head earlier. But actually, to go back to your concept of mockery, one of the instruments that they use most effectively against the dissenter is mockery. Yes, for example, Burke is mocked.
Yes.
More than he.
Yes, but again, two different forms of mockery. That's just them being assholes. They're not mocking him. They're just being assholes. They're just carrying on with their programming. Healthy mockery would be other men that would be mocking them on behalf of Burke, and mocking them to such a degree because it's real mockery. It's not being assholes. It's not, just talking shit again. No, it's real mockery that identifies they have no real power. They are powerless.
Yes.
Right?
But it also goes back to the audience, the gallery.
Yes.
The way that the gallery has been prepared to laugh at this form of mockery. And
it's the applause machines and on the TV shows.
Yes.
They say a thing, they do a thing, and then the light goes up, applaud, laugh.
Right? To my observation, Ian, in this particular case, this is the most entrenched problem, that the public refuse to listen to the facts because they can't get over the fact that they're being told that they must laugh at this man.
No, they won't do it, John, because of something you said very early in this conversation. They won't do it because they know violence is the only recourse, and they're cowards. And the most powerful force in the history of the world is cowardice. It's not courage. And at some point, people will realize that they must rise up against the cowardice, the tide of cowardice, against the tyrants, or they are no longer a people and they will be gone.
It is mind-boggling when you consider the facts of this case and place yourself in your body, the middle of your life, as opposed to the moment you're at now. And take into yourself all of the values that you have imbibed along the way, and the sense of what was real, what was admired, what was denigrated, what was condemned, what was laughed at, what was laughed with. You think, where are the people who should be responding to this in the way that they would have responded to it 30 years ago? As you say, they would have just simply banged the table and said, enough. Well,
what's happened in the last 40 some odd years in my own lifetime is steadily, the elite stopped supporting the men that were the corrective actions through force in their populace and communities. See, there used to be a time where our elites understood that our men needed to do these correctives at the bar, at school, at the PLA, and that was the thing that kept tyranny from occurring. But at some point in the starting in the 1970s, our elites stopped backing the men in their communities.
Yeah, go on.
Well, the only check on tyranny is the physical force of men.
Okay. Was there another factor that intruded into this equation? which is that two parts. One part was that certain organizations, violent organizations, clearly were exceeding the remit of honor culture in the way that they use violence. I would give as an example the Provisional IRA, who had a quarrel with the British government, with the British, historically with the British Empire. And what did they do? They went into English and in many English towns and set off bombs and killed innocent people. That to me was an abuse of the role of violence, and it gave a license. Now there's a second part. It gave a license, first of all, to the authorities then to say this cannot be permitted. Secondly, then it emerged, and it has emerged now, and it is emerging with force every day, that in precisely the case of the Provisional IRA, that the Provisional IRA, and my friend Patrick O'Carroll has written about this on my platform, John Motors Unchained, and very brilliantly, was an instrument. Our Provisional IRA was an instrument of MI6.
Correct. Specifically to bring about what you said first.
Yes. Yes. And this is just how in these ways was honor culture discredited.
Yes, it was infiltrated by the dishonorable.
Yes,
and infiltrated by the dishonorable to discredit it. And now we're up to the inevitable end, which is collapse, complete collapse. Because without honor culture, you don't have a culture. Without honor culture, there is no civilization. There's no economy. There's no functioning anything.
Is the tradition of honor culture and the right to bear arms is still an American thing? Isn't your culture in the culture in the United States healthier than the European culture?
Yes, but only just, because the reason in which we've not risen up here is because of all of the punitive destruction that comes against us, right? Like, if you want a prime example, the young Marine Corps guy on the New York subway who choked the guy out, didn't kill him. The guy was still alive. He choked the guy out because the guy was abusing and harming other people. And what happened? They brought the full force and power of the government against Penny, against the young man himself, who was trying to protect, with honor, trying to protect others. And oh, by the way, he wasn't the only one. There's another Hispanic or black guy there too, but they didn't bring the full force and power against him. They only brought it against the white guy. Right? So what we have to accept very much is that we have not had freedom of speech for at least 40 years. And we haven't had freedom of speech for at least 40 years because we haven't had the right to physical redress. Yes. So it doesn't matter if you own guns, if you don't use them. And oh, by the way, 90%, 99% of the redress we need to do doesn't need a gun. But part of what they did at the same time you were talking about is they flooded the criminal organizations with guns.
You know, it strikes me, that this gels very much with your other concept, which I'm not even sure is another concept, but the concept of the prince, the murder of the prince, as it were, in culture.
Yes.
That the two things are as one, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Because that was the prince's role was to maintain the check and balance on the honor culture, make sure it wasn't infiltrated, make sure it retained, and make sure that it was protected when it had to be used with the full force and power and wealth and assets and relationships of the prince.
Yes. And here's the extraordinary the paradox that, and we've touched on this before, that whereas people look on the prince as a form of oligarch, in actual fact, what we're creating is a collectivist oligarchy in the guise
with zero honor,
and amnesia surrounding the whole meaning of honor and its connection with manhood and fatherhood and all of these other.
Absolutely. The honest truth is, I'll just say it. If you are not capable, Jordan Peterson said it, but if you are, I'll just say it. People can argue all they want, but if you are not capable, that doesn't mean you use it. But if you are not capable of immense violence, you're not a man. You're a boy. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go around using violence. But if you are
No,
not
it probably
capable,
means you won't. It probably
it means
you.
that's exactly right. You certainly will not do it indiscriminately in the few times.
Yeah.
But if you are not capable of immense violence your entire life, by the way, right? Like Lord Pembroke, William Marshall led the battle at Lincoln in 1211 or whatever it was. I can't remember the exact date, but led the battle at Lincoln at the age of 70 in full armor and won the battle. Which is why the English aren't French now, because it was the French invading armies, et cetera, right? And so your whole life, you have to be capable of immense unrestrained violence when it is right for the restraint to come off. But what does that mean? It means, I would add one more word, surgically precise violence. No more, no less, and no broader than that violence absolutely needs to be.
Yeah, but there's all kinds of involutions. I read a story the other day about a bus driver in England someplace who had chased after a passenger who had stolen money from another passenger. And he caught the guy and they got into an altercation and he gave him a couple of slaps. And he came back, the other guy came back then to remonstrate further and he gave him a couple more slaps, I think. But at an inquiry by his employer, he was fired. Because because the mugger or the bus was a customer of the bus company.
No, it's all tyranny. This is estrogenic tyranny, male and female, by the way, right? Not just women. This is estrogenic tyranny. Estrogenic tyranny only works when honor society and honor culture isn't allowed to exist, and the full faith and power of the economy and the state and the culture are brought against them. But here's the inevitable result always. You end up with shit like the mutilation of children's genitals. You end up with the infiltration of your country by people who don't belong there. You end up with total and absolute slavery. And isn't that where we are?
It is where we are. And there's this extraordinary spell that is woven in this space where honor culture used to be, which suggests to everybody, the gallery and the participants, that before they were clouded in misunderstandings and in stupidity and brutality and so on. Whereas in fact, before they were acutely aware of the truth.
All the greatest works of literature were written in the time of men of honor. All the great cathedrals, all the great works of art. We've done none of that now. Now we got great works of art that's quite literally human feces in bronze.
Yes. See, there's nothing really else that writers can write about except honor and how it works.
And the dynamics and the times honor got wrong. And right, yes, it's that tension between surgically precise use of violence to redress a verbal system wrong, and the approbation, the opprobrium that's going to be thrown against the person who used the violence, that did the thing. That was a verbal word thing, wasn't physical violence, no, but it was violent, it was destructive, it was, going to kill or enslave some people. And of course, the resentful is going to come and attack the man of honor for doing the thing that was right. But what does good literature do? It takes the tension there, right? That dynamic tensions, and it finds a way to articulate that the man of honor who did this violent thing was right. And where violence is used inappropriately, where that was used inappropriately. Because sometimes, again, back to you were saying, the way in which honor society was destroyed is that honor groups and men of honor, their communities were infiltrated by violent men with no honor.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can see that now all over the place in the modern era in relation to public protests about whatever Masson plantation and so on.
Look at the intelligence communities, and look what the intelligence communities have done over the last century. Right. Look at what, special military units, certain military units, et cetera, have done. Right. So,
yeah. See, at a deep level, when you look into what's happened recently in our public cultures, it becomes traceable back to all of these factors.
Yes.
the state in all instances has more and more recourse to different forms of violence, which ultimately amount to the same form of violence. At the end result is pure brute force, and
Yes.
that is now on the cards everywhere.
As the only answer.
Yes, I mean there was a dreadful
Yeah.
incident where people may know the guy I'm talking about, George Galloway, a very famous. He's a blogger in Britain, and he's also a former member of Parliament of the British Parliament, many times actually, in various constituencies, including several in Britain. And he's an extraordinary, he's Scottish, and very brilliant guy, and. Back in September, he and his wife were not arrested. I was about to say arrested. They were detained at Gatwick Airport in London and brought into a room and interrogated for, I think, 4 and 5 hours. 5 hours for George and 4 hours for his wife. And George Galloway was told by the armed police officers who detained him, they told him, "You are not arrested, you're not under arrest, but you cannot leave. You have no right to silence. You are suspected of terrorist offences." Nonsense. He's suspected of actually saying things about the Ukraine war, for example, that they don't like. So you are suspected of terrorist offences, and any failure to cooperate with this interrogation will be regarded as a terrorist offence. Now, that's where we've arrived at in the society that I live
So
to.
let's pause a moment. All of that was in words. There was no physical blows, but all of that was violence.
Yes, agreed.
Because the ones imposing that were carrying guns.
Yes.
And because they were carrying guns and nobody with guns came to John, or were going to come to John Galloway's defense then or after.
Yes, George
right?
Galloway.
George Galloway, excuse me, right? Then the men with the guns dictated reality.
Yeah, it's a derivation of violence. It's five guys
unaccountable,
with guns telling me to keep walking.
Unaccountable violence. Yes.
Okay, sure, they're just telling me not to walk, but we're alone in a field. They all have guns and
I think at a metaphysical level, it has the same effect on the person as violence.
Oh, it does. Well, it's even worse
because
it's helplessness. It is emasculation.
Yes.
Right. The fact that they took his wife and there's even double emasculation, quadruple emasculation, because he couldn't defend her.
This is very true. And he has said this exactly because they both have had to leave Britain and they're living now, I think, in Malaysia. But she's saying she cannot go back there, and he would like to go back, but she cannot. And I understand, and he understands why she cannot go back there. I would support her not going back. I would urge her not to go back. But this is an extraordinary thing, a terrible thing for a good man to be faced with, that his wife is treated in this way, and he cannot do anything to
So what happens is that revolutions occur exactly on the tyrannical path, elites, or the lunatic path elites take to prevent them. And what is that revolution? It is a return of unrestrained violence by those being repressed. And it will come, it always comes, whether it comes after a collapse or it comes before a collapse, we don't know at this point. Right now, I want to, and I'm terribly sorry, I'm going to have to go here, John, but I really enjoy the conversation. And thank you, Tommy, for putting this on. My deep suspicion, the more and more I look at it, for this is over many years, is that all of this goes back to World War I, and that we have not recovered societally. We have not come to grips with how honor society was used to drive millions of men to just an outright slaughter. On purpose, by the way, by resentfuls, to remove honor society, because that you have to remove honor society if you're going to enslave a people. And so that's what World War I was about. And we can't come to grips with the fact, one, we were manipulated into it, and two, that without strong, capable princes to bring their men against the state, to say, no, we will not all go to a great slaughter, then honor society can be used to go kill itself. And we haven't come to grips with those two things. One, that we were manipulated into World War I specifically to remove men and the strength of honorable men. And on the other side, on the honorable men's side, we have a problem, and I see it with guys today. I talk to Navy SEALs, SAS guys, et cetera. They have a problem where they don't want to admit and can't admit that they can be so easily manipulated to their own, to others and their own death.
Yes, and that is a very strong resonance there in relation to the Irish Revolution of 1960.
Yes,
because that revolution arose when it did because of World War One.
yes.
And I guess you could put it like this, that these men, the men of 16 they were called, they resolved, well, if we are going to be sent out to foreign places to fight for the King of England or whatever it is that they're fighting for, a fight that is not ours, would we not be better fighting for our own country at home? And these things are not understood nowadays at all in the way that and one of the reasons is, by the way, I won't delay you much further, Ian, but one of the clear reasons that I'm seeing all the time now in the modern context, that natural law within our constitutions has been stripped gradually away.
Yes, because you have to have an honor culture of men who will stand and fight for what is natural.
Yes, that you need to know that what is there in the law books corresponds to your own heart.
Yes, to honor, to truth. Yes, right. That's the thing about honor. Honor is a thing hard earned amongst men in stark reality. Meaning, I've probably been punched in the face numerous times for saying shit that wasn't real, or saying shit that was not too lowbrow for where we needed to be, or trying to take us down. Even my friends, like I've had a friend pummel me one time because I was going to go out and drink and drive. I was too drunk to realize what I was doing, but I was a big strapping lad, and I wanted to go, I think it was to some chick's house. This is 30 some odd years ago. And it took him to physically no shit put me on the ground and keep me there to stop me.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He was right. He was absolutely right.
He did you a great favor.
He did myself and probably others as well, right?
Yeah.
But this is the thing about honor culture. Honor culture is hard grounded in hard physical reality, and that's what they hate the most.
Can this be reclaimed? Given everything that we're talking about, all the noise that they've generated.
There's still a lot of men that live in honor. So one, there is a good non-negligible percent of men who still live in honor, live it every day. Non-negligible, and they're very experienced, and they've been broken of a lot of the control mechanisms of the lies of government and metals and all that other shit. The problem is incentive structures. There's no incentive, economic, financial incentive structures right now to support men of men of honor. There's none. There's a very tiny fraction subset of financial wherewithal for being a man of honor. And
there's a constant ideological cascade against him.
Correct.
Condemning him in advance in case he might.
The problem is that we don't have princes anymore, because the princes were men of substance. They were men of wealth. They were men of power and position who themselves, every one of them had to be a knight. Every one of them had been fostered. Every one of them had spent at least 7 years of their life, and usually more than that, 10 to 12, in the world of man, earning status, hard earning status in the world of men by becoming a man of honor. And we don't have princes. And those were the princes that then preserved and set the status, the economic and incentive and status structure hierarchies for men of honor in their kingdom, principality, in society. We don't have those anymore. We have wealthy elites who hire security teams that they have no comprehension, like Clay says, right? They have no comprehension that security team doesn't really work for them. They're taking a paycheck, but that person doesn't own them. And on the other side, 99.99% of these high net worth people I've met aren't respected whatsoever by the men of honor who preserve them, because that male, that rich guy, is not a man of honor.
Well, there's one other thing I want to just before you go, and
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I touched on this with you before because it comes to me now as a real dualism.
Mm.
Robert Bly talked about this, the difference between the wild man and the savage man.
Yeah.
And what the wild man belonged to the honor culture because he knew he had been educated by other men in the spirit of manhood.
Yeah.
The savage man, according to Bly, was a man who had spent most of his time in the company of women, and in other words, he was a macho man. The macho man is not masculine man. They're two different things. The masculine man is the wild man because he knows what is necessary. There are certain situations where force is necessary and physical strength is necessary. The savage man is simply showing off. And this is something that in fact, the absence of honor in our societies, you can see it in all kinds of ways now. You can even see it in public demonstrations about, say, lockdowns or whatever it is, that you get these men who are just shouting and roaring, making noise, throwing things. There's nothing directed about it. It's all for show. It's all for, notice. Would you agree with that, or do you see this differently?
Beautiful bringing Bly in. Absolutely. Let's add one more piece. The savage man is the one who does the sexual assaults and rapes.
Yes.
Right? And why are they doing them? Why are they getting away from them? Because the heroic man, the wild man, isn't allowed to do wild things that are necessary to fix that, to solve and address that problem.
Precisely.
And if the wild man tries, like a father, he goes to prison.
Precisely.
And now, because of one horrible insult to my child, I do the corrective, but now my child doesn't have me for the rest of their life because I've been sent to prison. And I have to, this gets back to people, and I hear people talking, somebody I blocked them the other day for, talking shit about GWAT veterans and how estrogenic we are and how, use my own language and said, good on them for that. But, how estrogenic we are because we're not correcting these problems. Well, there are a few guys that have, and they're in prison, and now they're not there for their family. So I'm going to go to prison,
and you have to make that calculation
to solve one, to address one evil. I'm going to go to prison and not be there to preserve and protect my family for the rest of their fucking life.
And the more fatherly thing you can do is actually be humiliated and not do anything, but
correct,
be there for your child.
And do everything I can to try and help them recover and gain courage and strength and all of that, and et cetera. But this concept and idea...
That can only keep going for so long. That can only keep getting kicked. The can keeps going down the road, till eventually we'll come back to base reality.
Exactly. So to your point, right, where we are getting now is that subset of truly still heroic men are very much getting to a place to where we realize that our daughters are going to be threatened in ways, and our young sons too, by the way, because rape doesn't just happen against girls, but our children and our spouses and our sisters and our brothers are threatened in ways that is more than the one-off random crazy thing. It's becoming the norm. And at some point we wake up and realize, and now here's John, specifically to your question, okay? The problem that we have is that our wives, our women, have to give us permission to be wild men again.
Great.
Because women are the ones, and the world of women is the one that controls the incentive structures. The greater, broader incentive structures.
I think that's a very, very clear conclusion that needs to be made. And I think that you could put it like this, that women have become the instruments, wives have become the instruments of the new totalitarianism. They police their men.
And they don't want to give up that power, even if it means the rape and sacrifice of their own children and the children of others.
They don't make the connection, I don't think. And we need to make it for them. It needs to be made, is the thing. Yes. Because this thing goes back to something I've discovered in Irish culture way back. I think I spoke about it in one of our previous discussions, where, the Catholic Church was involved in creating a situation where, men and women were separated and the demographic collapsed and so on. And women, the mother, was used by the church via the priest as the weapon of the quote-unquote moralization of the family. In other
Yes.
words, the control of the sexuality, the sensuality, and by extension on the very spirit of the family, the
The
boys and the
soul,
girls
the
as they were
heart.
created.
Yes. Yes. So
And the father
terribly
was
sorry, guys.
bypassed.
Yeah. Terribly sorry. I'm gonna have to jump, but John, I think this is a great place for us to start the next conversation in a month or so when I come back. But a little thing to put in your mind, and I love these conversations. I'm so grateful to you for taking them on. The neurological wiring in lower status men and women that was there 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago is still there. And that wiring is to sacrifice, to earn status in their tribe, their group, etc., off of having sacrificed themselves or their children in raiding season or in war. And that's sexual assaults, that's rapes, that's war briding, that's slavery, having them taken away as slaves, it's having sent them to death, etc. So the wiring for earning status through sacrificing your children and even yourself for the tribe is still the deepest wiring in us.
Mm.
And that now, because you don't have the men of honor to check and control that, right? Now you want, well, part of the reason they're removing the men of honor is so there isn't a check and control on that, because when you have a men of honor society, we police that internally. And if we're not having to worry about raiding season externally because we've organized ourselves in more sophisticated ways, what happens is you'll get rid of men of honor so you can go back to these fucked up psychological mechanisms in people that made them okay, made it okay for them to continue to survive despite, fighting and raiding season and the sacrifice of their children and themselves. And so they remove the men of honor society specifically so they could have the savagery, because that savagery allows for their earning of status through sacrifice, through a type of sacrifice that they can't do in any other way.
And to add the punchline, we now have a society of dishonor, because what we actually are listening to now, almost on a weekly basis, we see these headlines. I'll give you just one example of a judge in a report which I read recently, a court report, a migrant rapist. The judge said, well, where he comes from, this is not regarded in the same way as it is here.
Women got rid of women and estrogenic males, got rid of men of honor specifically so they can bring the savagery back, because the way in which they psychologically earn status is in the sacrifice of themselves and their children. They can't build anything. They can't create anything. They can't, innovate anything. Their only way to earn status is through sacrifice, this physical, horrible, horrendous sacrifice. And so they need the savagery. And now it's everywhere in everything.
And if anybody doubts what you've just said, as OTT or whatever, just a simple question. Where are the voices of feminists against what is happening?
And every time a man of honor steps forward and responds properly, to stop the savagery or reduce it, what happens to him?
He gets attacked.
They throw him in prison. They bankrupt him. They ruin his family. Why? Not because he's, because they're threatened. No, because he reduced the savagery that might allow them, if their daughter's sacrificed in a rape, for them to earn status in the community. Right?
If they put out the fire, how can I heroically come to the rescue with a bucket of water?
How can I not have my kid immolated in a fire that I somehow got out of, right? I miraculously got out of. So I'm terribly sorry, guys. I got family and kids and everybody here, and I got an old man bladder.
Old man. I just got to do what I do, man. Just no excuses. Just leave and go to the bathroom. I never tell anyone. I'm gone. We'll wrap this up. EM, thank you. John, thank you. Guys listening, description, Twitter, books, links, websites, all that shit. John Waters, thank you so much. EM Burlingame,
thank you, John.
Much. Until next time, gentlemen. Thank you. Hey guys, real quick, you guys know Basil Baz, ARC, the Association for the Recovery of Children. I just did a fundraiser with them the other day, and I'm going to put this on to every episode I do. They are special forces veterans who physically rescue trafficked children. They have since 1993. They have a 100% success rate. They do not take salaries. They all have day jobs, and they literally rescue sex trafficked children. Donations to them are a tax write-off. I get nothing from them, and they have not asked me to put this on. I've included this little clip on episodes for the last year or so, and I'm just re-recording it because I just got to meet him just 2 days ago for future. It's November 25th, 2025, but this will be on every episode now for the next year. And there is nothing better you can do with your money. If you can support them for even $5, please do that. It is, they truly are doing the Lord's work, and I think we all have an obligation to do that. Thank you so much.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com.
Hey guys, a huge sponsor of the show is Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food. Clayton lives down in Georgia. He's been on the show before. It's actually nearby where I went to college. They are a huge sponsor of the show. They give me some money every month, even when I don't sell enough to warrant that paycheck. Meaning that the show is not free. It's just that it's free for you. If you guys need prepper food, or if you're just interested in supporting the show, I'd please ask you to go to the link in the description. Go to Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food, promo code TPC for 10% off. 72 servings per pail, 25-year shelf life. These things are, they double as dumbbells. Pasta Primavera, cheesy potato soup, mac and cheese, loaded baked potato casserole, chili mac, cheddar broccoli soup, cheesy lasagna, teriyaki rice. You can get banana chips. There's also raspberries, strawberries, and apples. There's a bunch of freeze-dried fruit, or you can even get seeds to plant your own garden. It's not a bad thing to have. It's like gold or ammunition. It's a good thing to have. It's a bad thing if you have to use it, but it's good. It's good to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. So that's what I'd say. And if you just want to support the show, please go to the link in the description. Please go support them because they support me. Thank you so much, guys.